not gonna be able to sleep tonight. The fact that I like helped you realize what the final scene meant for the whole
Yeah,
film.
what
That's
it's
like
trying to
it's a
say.
big
Yeah.
moment for me, especially during a time travel film. This is a huge moment for me, everyone.
Hello, I'm Joe.
I'm Nick.
And today we are addressing the first of our time travel movie draft. I have first pick on this. It's 12 Monkeys from the category of Stuck in the Loop. Nick, have you ever heard of 12 Monkeys before?
Before this, I had not heard of the movie 12 Monkeys. When you picked it during our time travel draft, that was the first time I'd ever heard of it. And immediately I thought, what a ridiculous name for a film. And that I thought about that the whole time. The whole film, they're talking about finding the army of the 12 monkeys. And every time they said those words, I thought, this is crazy. What? Because it's just such a funny name and ridiculous. It's just a ridiculous phrase to say. And that was what I thought. And it had there's a reason that it was ridiculous. You find out as the movie gets on. So,
right, I was going to say that must have been very validating for you.
It was extremely validating at the end when I realized, okay, my thought on the stupidity of the name was not unwarranted.
No, definitely not. So for those who are uninitiated into 12 Monkeys, 12 Monkeys came out in 95. It is performed by Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt. The director is a bit of a crazy one for me. It's Terry Gilliam. If you're familiar with the name, he is one of the Monty Python boys, best known for Monty Python: The Holy Grail, Brazil. More recently, I think it's The Death of Don Quixote was the movie that was first from hell that he was trying to direct. Anyway, yeah, so it's a Terry Gilliam movie. It's got some hallmarks of his style. But before we get into the plot, Nick, we haven't done a movie in a while. Do you know what that means? Do you know what we have to do right now?
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I just remembered.
Totally
and it's
forgot.
your turn.
No, it's not my turn.
It is totally your turn.
No,
oh, man.
This is the worst.
Oh, man. It is time for the 15-second movie summary. Oh,
I'm so upset. I'm so upset. Well, one, I'm very glad that you remembered so that we don't forget to do it. But two, I'm so pissed that it's my turn because I could have prepared a little bit for the 15-second summary had I remembered. Oh, God.
Oh, where was the fun of that?
Okay. Well, this is going to suck.
Yeah. So if this is your first time listening to us, or if you need a reminder, since it's been a while since we've done this, we go back and forth grading each other on how effectively we can summarize a movie in 15 seconds. And I will give Nick a grade from F to A. Probably an F in this case. We'll see how he does. You ready, Nick?
I am not, in fact, ready, but we're going to...
All right, I'm going to give you a countdown. Ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1, go.
Bruce Willis stars in this movie called 12 Monkeys, and he is in the future, and he has to go back. He gets sent back to the past to locate the army of the 12 monkeys to figure out who started the pandemic to try to stop the pandemic. I mean, that was terrible, but I got a lot of the points. I got the important stuff.
You got a lot of the points in the last 5 seconds. You spent a long time on Bruce Willis time traveling.
I know. Well, look, time travel, it's not an exact science, okay?
Time travel. Time. It's not what you think it is. I'm gonna give you got all the major points in there. Spent a little bit too long on the one action of Bruce Willis, but I'm gonna give you a B- for that. I think
that's generous. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Most of the plot.
Yeah, that's true.
Listening for plague, I was like, is he gonna totally miss the plague part? Because that's the whole point of the movie.
Yeah, I said pandemic. I got it. I got it.
There you got
Yeah.
it.
In my head, I was like, I have to say 12 Monkeys and Pandemic before this 15 seconds is up, or we're screwed. All right,
All right. So B minus
do
6. Would you
this.
like to give a more in depth summary of the movie that's not comically terrible in 15 seconds?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I would love to. Um, so, yeah, basically, this is a time travel film, of course. And Bruce Willis's character, James Cole, is a prisoner in the year 2035. And at some point throughout previous history, somewhere around 1997, there was a pandemic. And it wiped out like most of the population. I forget the exact number. And so these people in the future have created a form of time travel to send back prisoners to help them gather information so that they can figure out how the pandemic started, so that they can figure out how not to stop the pandemic, but so that they can locate the original serum so that they can use that in the future to eradicate the disease, basically. So they're not trying to prevent it from ever happening. They're trying to eradicate the disease in the future so that life can start to go back to normal, which I thought was an interesting concept. I was like, oh, they're not even trying to save humanity from the previous. They're just trying to save everyone from, moving forward in their current time. And because I think in the other way would have, you kind of get into some time travel rules if you start to meddle with the past, right? So, which they do meddle, but anyway. So he goes back in time, and he meets a guy named Jeffrey, who is I guess ends up being the leader of the army of the 12 monkeys. And yeah, I don't want to give away, I guess, the whole thing, because we were going to talk about it, but that's kind of a bigger synopsis. And yeah.
Yeah.
How did that go?
Much better. Pretty good. The one thing I did want to address that you brought up there was what it says about time travel, because you're right, like they're not trying to fix the future by like amending the past, right? Going in the past and like
Right.
trying to like stop something from happening, right? Because like they say, and Bruce Willis actually says this a few times, that what's happened in the past has happened, and the past cannot be changed. So it's not something that they're trying to do, right? And we come to realize how actually concrete those words come to be as the movie progresses.
Right.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I have some questions from like on like a metaphysical level about where Cole is in his journey, but we'll get to that. Anyway, so yeah, I first became aware of this movie. I think back in like it was like 2007. I was in film class, and our teacher brought this film up. And this film was so bananas. Like I think that's an appropriate
100%.
adjective. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's the
Cue
most
monkeys, by the way.
appropriate. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right? Like most appropriate use of the word bananas.
Yeah.
It's mostly because of Brad Pitt's character,
Oh my
Jeffrey.
gosh. We have to talk
Uh,
about him in a second.
oh yeah,
My
let's
gosh.
do that. So I think I told you Brad Pitt was in this movie, but I didn't tell you like how.
Right.
What do you
Yeah.
think of
So,
Jeffrey?
oh my gosh. First of all, a few notes, right? This is the youngest I've ever seen Brad Pitt in a movie, I think.
Mm,
I mean, this is 1995. So this is like one of his earlier roles in general, right? And he won a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor for this role, which is like, and he deserved it because honestly, I've seen a lot of Brad Pitt movies, and I'm a Brad Pitt fan. This might be the best acting performance I've ever seen from him. And this is from 1995. Like, if you are a Brad Pitt fan and you have not seen this movie, you have to watch it. But I'm warning you, it's not the normal Brad Pitt that you're used to.
no, it's not. It
Because
is
he's,
probably his most different character.
yeah, 100%. That's probably why I liked it so much, because it was so much different than his normal roles. or the roles that people are used to seeing him in. Yeah, he plays someone who, when you first meet him, he's in an insane institution, basically, mental hospital, and he's definitely not all there. But he plays it so well. I was like, I was enthralled the whole time. I was like, man, he's just like really good at this. Like, he's doing it. Was awesome and crazy because it's like the role that he plays, Jeffrey, is yeah, he's not all there. So
No, he's a hyperactive, mentally unstable person. Uh,
yeah,
and yeah, he's pretty much like, I think you could describe him in D&D terms as like chaotic neutral. He's just all over the place, and you just don't know like what he's gonna do at any given moment.
yeah,
Um, I really appreciate uh, I really appreciate some of the editorial choices that were made around his performance that I think like enhance like how crazy Brad Pitt comes off in this movie. And like he comes off as insane. Um, with a lot of like the hand gestures, the repetitiveness that he's always doing. Like
yeah.
I'm not sure how those who have been affected by like mental illness, like in their families, I don't know how they would feel about like watching this kind of character. As someone who luckily has not had to deal with that, I look at this and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I have seen people with these mannerisms before, right? Like this doesn't feel like he just made this up. It does feel like it's based on something, um, and I did appreciate that. But as far as the editorial decisions that I was talking about, when they're in the mental asylum, uh, there's this moment where Jeffrey is showing Cole around the institute, and he's standing under a TV that
Hmm.
has Looney Tunes playing, and I love that you can't see the TV, but you can hear it,
Hmm.
and as Jeffrey is talking and he's moving his hands and he's saying all these crazy things about capitalism and humans and how we're all just living for the man and we're all part of this system. As he's saying these things, you can hear like the Looney Tunes like sound effects going off, like like all these noises going off. So he's coming off like a Looney Tune.
Yeah,
Um, wonderful, wonderful direction. I absolutely love that.
yeah, yeah,
Um, Nick, as far as your introduction to this movie, because like you said, the movie takes place in 2035, and
yep.
we meet Cole, and he's this prisoner, and he gets sent back into the past. What were your impressions on just Bruce Willis's character and Cole, and when this movie first starts?
Yeah, when it first starts, I was like, it's weird, right? Because the movie comes out in 1995, and so like you have to kind of put yourself in 1995 when this movie comes out, and it takes place. The opening scene takes place in 2035, which is like that's the present time for the character when we meet him for the first time, right? 2035 is present, and it's future. It's the future, so you think it's going to look futuristic, but then you realize that like it's a future that is based on a previous pandemic happening and wiping out most of life. So the futuristicness of it is really based on like life as we know it kind of stalling in 1997 because that's when the pandemic starts. So like anything that you see in 2035 doesn't come from a world that like progressed technology wise from 1997 to 2035. It comes from a world that essentially stopped progressing in 1997 and then had to deal with a global pandemic that wiped out most of humanity. So like the advancement from 97 to 2035 is like it's like minimal, I think, in like a lot of aspects, except for them figuring out how to time travel. And so like you like I think in a way you're supposed to get that like basically all that humanity has done is put all their energy into figuring out how to time travel so they can figure out how to stop this disease. And so all the tools that they've put together for to the time travel is it doesn't like trying to put yourself in 1995 shoes like when it comes out you're just I think that even in 1995 you would have maybe pictured a different 2035 future, but when you put into consideration that there's going to be like 20 years of advancement that actually doesn't happen because of a pandemic, then maybe it actually is a little bit more in line with what it might look like in that case. So I thought it was like I at first I was like, this why does it look like so shitty for 2035 if it's the future, even though the movie was still made, in 95. And then as the movie progresses, you realize it's actually it's actually brilliantly done, because basically when this pandemic starts in 1997, nothing else is going to happen afterwards. And then it's going to be much smaller increments of technological advancement, but they figured out how to time travel. So good job for them, I guess. But that was my initial impression. And some other thoughts like throughout, I guess, based on how that looks. Because there's this scene like like in the first couple minutes and a couple times throughout the movie when like when Cole is back in his present time, because throughout the movie he's flipping back and forth between whether it's 97 or 1990, because we'll get to that. But when he's back in his present time, he's like on this chair floating in the air, and there's like a ball of TVs. And like, if it was like our future, it would be like one big screen TV, and there would be like a bunch of different, like there would be a grid of the people that he's talking to's faces, right? And it would be very clean. But because it's a 2035 that didn't have, 20 years of technology advancement beforehand, because they were dealing with a pandemic, it's like a ball with a bunch of like old shitty ass like TVs from the 90s, like scrunched into it. And so it looks like it's like shitty futuristic is kind of how it looks in a way. But it makes sense based on what had happened in that life, in that world. Anyway,
I have two thoughts that I want to follow up on that with, because I think you're right, and I think that's incredibly intentional,
right.
regarding like not having had the opportunity to develop or test things that work or not work, because in this dystopian future they haven't had that opportunity, right? And I think you're right about that, because like something that Terry Gilliam is really good at is actually like imagining those kinds of set pieces, right? Brazil has a very similar set piece taking place in like a technological future, and it looks the way that it does because it's like prior to this it was like ravaged by war, right? And it developed in a very specific way because of that. So like the past informs the future, right? As always, but he's being very specific about what kind of past informs that future, right? So I think you hit the nail on the head there. And to like make it even better, it kind of goes in with the theme of the movie, which is like that humans like make everything worse, right?
Right. Yeah.
So like we saved ourselves, but like we live underground and we have this like horrible
Right.
technology that hasn't really upgraded at all, right? And we come to find out throughout the film, there's all this commentary about how like humans have been horrible to the earth, they've been horrible to animals, and they create more problems than they solve. And the end of the movie like has a hard thesis on that, right? It's like we are in the mess that we are in because of us.
Right.
But yeah, we'll get into that twist. So one thing that we haven't talked about is when the movie starts. It starts in a dreamlike sequence with Cole, and he keeps having this dream about a little boy and witnessing some kind of carnage, a tragedy that happens in seemingly an airport, right? Um, and he's not sure what that means. But Cole, we come to realize throughout the film, Cole's like a really unreliable narrator, right?
Yeah.
He says it's because his mind can't anchor itself between the two times, right? Between 35 and 90, then 1917, and then
Oh yeah. Right.
1996.
Yeah. I
Kind of
already.
bounces all over the place. I
Yeah.
actually think that's one of the movie's better jokes. When they mess up the first time, right? They send him to 1990,
Yeah.
and when he returns to the future, they're like, no more mess ups. This time, 96, right on the money. And then they overshoot it and send him to World War One.
Right.
I did enjoy that.
Yeah.
Mm.
So ridiculous. And that's a cool part too for the moment, just because of what happens later.
Hmm.
Um, but we'll get there. But yeah, I guess it was 96. I think I said 97 earlier, which I mean, really, whatever. But yeah, 96 is the year that like the pandemic actually hits. Um,
Hmm.
um, but as far as him
So,
being like unreliable, I was just thinking, sorry.
okay,
But
yeah,
as
I
far
was
as
like, are
him
you
being like,
okay?
as far as him having like an unreliable brain, it's very interesting, right? Because he is flipping back and forth between times. So that makes sense, right? That like, and their time travel isn't like obviously perfect. And so he's having trouble anchoring like his brain to the times that he's in. And it takes him usually a day or two to kind of like gather himself and really be, like on point in the particular timeline that he's in. But then it also brings up this question on like, how much of like what he's remembering is actually his original memory from as when he was a kid, how much of it is warped from the multiple time travel scenarios. They're like, you chose this as a stuck in the loop film, and there's like multiple loops happening in this film. Like it's kind of wild.
Mhm.
Right? Like there's his dream loop that he has that occasionally shows someone else running away before getting shot. Like you see like two or three different faces throughout the film, and then finally towards the end you like, you realize that like, oh, he's the one who gets shot. But like, is is that the case? Like like, I mean, he did, but like, I don't know, like the other earlier parts of the film you saw a different face. So
I have to go back for a second. I just want to say I agree with everything that you said, but the term unreliable brain might be the most offensive thing I think I've ever heard you say about someone. Like it's so much worse than like saying like he's an unreliable narrator. It's like, no, you have an unreliable brain. That's worse than calling someone stupid.
did I say unreliable brain?
Unreliable
Oh,
brain.
hell yeah. That's amazing. I'm going to use that. That is such an insult.
That's,
In this case, it works because he does have an unreliable
yeah,
brain
he
for
does have
multiple
an
parts of the
unreliable
film.
brain.
But man, I can't wait to say that to somebody next. They're gonna be like,
That,
"That's
it's devastating. I don't think you can come back from that.
oh my gosh." Can you imagine just sending like a coworker a text message? You have an unreliable brain. Never speak
Right,
to me
right.
again.
Like, what, how do you respond to that? You can't. Everything you say at
Oh,
that point is in question.
that's fantastic. Well, yeah, but that's what's so crazy about this film, right? Is we're dealing with multiple characters with unreliable brains. And the reliable brain for most of the film is the psychiatrist, who's a very important character to Cole. But
Yes,
then
yes.
as the film
Dr.
progresses,
Riley.
you start to wonder if Dr. Riley is even, how reliable is she becoming? Like, and now granted, to us, to the audience, she's very reliable, and we kind of start to side with her and realize, okay, her and Cole, like she starts to believe Cole, that Cole's actually a time traveler and he's actually trying to stop this global thing, and she has like all this research and she's written a book and about like, like just like, time travel throughout history or whatever.
No, it's specifically she was writing about, I forgot the exact term, but it's some kind of hearkening to the myth about Cassandra from like Greek myths, which like she was an important like Greek mythic figure. She's the woman who can see the future and has like near perfect like vision of it, but no one believes her, right? And like that's what like her thesis is about, is like these people who like historically have like said things that appear to be like insane, but they end up coming true, right?
Yeah,
And she calls it like a psychological effect. Um,
right.
but it appears by labeling it a psychological effect, that might be the crazy thing.
Right.
Um,
But So she has a study, and I think that lends her to also believe Cole and help Cole a little bit. But the funniest part about it is that like as they get closer together and start actually like working together, like whereas like Cole originally is like kind of taking her hostage, and then eventually it like over the years it transfers into her helping Cole. But then to everyone else, she looks like she's lost her mind and been brainwashed by this insane guy already.
I mean, I question her a little bit. I don't know
Yeah.
about
Oh,
you.
100%.
Like
100%.
the relationship she starts like budding with him. I'm like, lady, are you okay?
Yeah.
Like I could see maybe believing him, right? But like the sexual attraction, I'm like, I don't know
Yeah.
about
Well,
this.
that's why I was like, she also kind of has a little bit of an unreliable brain at one point. I mean, she just gets like, what's the syndrome? When you're with the captor, what the hell is it
Oh,
called?
Stockholm syndrome.
Stockholm syndrome. She gets it really
Yeah.
quickly, like really quickly in this film. She kind of gets that. It feels like at least.
Also, the
Um,
character who says that, like, because there's a detective that tells her, oh, like,
oh
oh, it's
yeah,
amazing how these people who are kidnapped end up defending their kidnappers. I did not remember
you didn't
this
remember
person was in this movie.
Christopher Maloney, aka Ken Stabler from SVU.
Yeah. So you
So
texted
cool.
me.
So
So
cool.
Nick saw this movie before I did in our review of it, and you sent me a text. I think like maybe like an hour into the movie, and just all capital letters, just Stabler, and like I could only think of one character who's Stabler, right? I was like, well, that's SVU, but I was like, I don't remember him being in the movie. That's right. And then like, sure as shit, like go and watch the movie, and there he is. He's playing a
He's
detective.
of course he's playing a detective. Yeah, I was that was a cool surprise. This cast actually. This movie is in 1995, but there are some like actors in this movie that have had like a long like career, and they're in a bunch of stuff. Like John Cena, who plays Cole's friend from prison at the very beginning, who then shows up later at the end, plays Jose in the
Jose,
film. John
right?
Cena's like he's been on like I think it's Chicago PD for like 10
Hmm.
years. Like this guy's like a running character, like major character on like Chicago PD. Like Christopher Plummer, of course. Um, David Morse has like an insane acting catalog. David Morse is the guy who plays Dr. Peters, which is the guy that um, he's actually the person who's releasing this plague, and you don't find out until the very end, that the future has it wrong. They're completely, they're chasing the wrong people. But he's got like an extensive acting catalog, and then there's a couple others too. So I found that really interesting. Yeah, pretty cool. Like some pretty cool like castings even
Hmm.
from back then.
So
Um,
I saw this movie. I was lucky to watch this movie in a local theater not too far away from my place. So I actually got like the audience theater like reactions to certain things.
mhm.
And one of the bigger reactions, like funny enough, was when sorry, what is the actor's name who plays Sailor Maloney?
Christopher Maloney. Yep.
Christopher Maloney. When Christopher Maloney like appears on screen, there's a collective like like around the theater like when he showed up.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, like an
Also,
audible gasp.
that's awesome. That's like my reaction was like, oh, I think I did that. Then when I saw it last week, that's great. The other thing I'm just noticing now is apparently this is going to shock you because you didn't mention it, which means you didn't notice him either, most likely. One of the psychiatric prisoners from the opening, from the beginning, the earlier in the film, I'm assuming it's when Cole and Jeffrey meet for the first time in this, when Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt meet for the first time in the psychiatric hospital. One of the prisoners was played by Donald Faison.
No, really?
Turk from Scrubs,
Yeah,
apparently,
like
in this movie as a prisoner in that scene somewhere. I have to go back and watch this now and look for him.
yeah. I Dude, he's
He's
got to
way
be like an
down.
extra or something.
Yeah,
That's so
totally an extra.
weird.
He's way down. He's way down on this list. Like I scrolled way further than I needed to. He's literally like at the bottom 7 of this list on cast.
Okay, yeah, because like I'm on the main actors page for IMDb and he's nowhere on it.
Yeah, it's very bottom. Like
Wow. Yeah, that's a fun fact. I did not
I'm gonna
catch
have to
him.
go back now and watch. Well, I'm gonna have to go to that scene and see if I notice him. That's funny.
Yeah, that is funny.
But yeah, I was like pleasantly surprised because you watch an older film and like there's a good chance that like maybe you know the title actor or two, but like everyone else in there, it's gonna be hit or miss. Like, but there's a number of younger actors from _95 that are still acting today, and they've got like insane resumes now, which is kind of cool.
That is wild.
It was probably partly why the movie was actually still holds up. Like, there's some like, I mean, most of the movie takes place in 1990 or 1996, so like from a technology standpoint, there wasn't like a lot of stuff going on then anyway. So it's not hard to like get into the movie. It's not like you're watching like a movie that's supposed to take place in 2066 the whole time. Like if you go watch the original Blade Runner, sometimes it can be difficult because like it doesn't feel, to me it doesn't hold up very well from a futuristic standpoint, like for today's technology. I think they do better with Blade Runner 2049 in that respect. But anyway, but like for this movie, it's an older movie and it's opens up in 2035, but because of the state of the world, you can kind of believe why it looks like this because they're all living underground. And then most of the movie, you're just like in 1990 or 1996, and it's not hard to like get back in the mindset of like what life was because it was simpler then, I guess, because there's not as much crazy technology. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of like my thought process on it still holding up and like not being a hard movie to watch. Like it was, and it's well acted. Like I think Bruce Willis does a really good job playing a unreasonable brain type or unreliable brain type.
Unreliable brain. You have an unreliable brain.
That's funny.
Your brain no good.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about what you mentioned earlier. This movie actually seems to contain a few different loops.
Yeah.
And I think that's like one of the more interesting aspects of this film, is the idea, and they keep saying this, that you can't change the past. The past is the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is Bruce Willis, James Cole is saying that to characters of the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if time is relative, then he is in their past, but he's living his present, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a now for him, right? And it seems as though like it's hard for him to know exactly like when he is living his now versus when he is part of the past.
Mm-hmm.
Because we come to find out that there's a bit of a feedback loop happening in this movie, right? Where we started in 2035 with the idea of the army of the 12 monkeys release this plague, go back in time, see if we can find the 12 monkeys so we can get the plague and make a cure. Goes back in time looking for the army of the 12 monkeys, and he incepts the idea of the army of the 12 monkeys into Jeffrey, right?
Right.
And then later, like when he starts asking about the plague, he plants the idea of the plague in Jeffrey, but Jeffrey wants nothing to do with it. Um, it's later when Dr. Riley calls Jeffrey's father about the plague, and the father just happens to rattle off like how crazy of an idea that is to his lab assistant. So like the past informs the future, but the future is informing the past, right? At the same time. And it's
Right.
this horrible paradox that humans have created.
Right.
Um,
Because if
how
they
did
don't,
you? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, because if they don't send him back in time, then nothing ever happens and it's fine. But
But it
but
always happened, right?
but it
Because
always happens because 2035 is in 2035.
right, and
So
and Cole witnesses his own death. So
right.
like he witnesses like his future, and by like proxy, like he's living in his past. So like it can't be changed because he witnessed it already,
Right.
right? Like it's part of the past. So like he has to die in that moment, and he has to die in that moment because he traveled to the past specifically to gather information about this thing that hasn't happened yet. It's insane.
Yeah, but the thing that I'm like wondering is at the very end of the movie, like they figure out that they're chasing the wrong people. They figure out at the end that the 12 monkeys are just like Jeffrey and his gang of people. Like they're insane, and they're not, and they're insane enough and smart enough to release monkeys from, or release animals from the zoo, but they're not insane and smart enough to actually like release a pandemic. That's someone else. That's the lab assistant of Dr. Riley that has decided to, you know, bring a bunch of vials of this deadly disease all around the world. But they figure it out at the end, and they relay Cole relays the message via phone to the future, which then they send his friend from prison at the beginning back in time to meet him at the airport to then actually stop the lab assistant. But my biggest gripe here is that, okay, he does relay the message on who actually is responsible. Well, then why can't the future send someone back specifically when they need to for the lab assistant at a different time? Right? Like this is the whole like it's the whole Avengers Rowdy paradox of like Rowdy being like, why don't we just go back in time and just, you know, Thanos, right? Like why can't you just do that? Right?
First
like,
off, his name is Rhodey. I'll have you know.
Excuse me. Sorry, everyone. I do that every time.
Yes, you do.
You know why I said Rowdy? Because we just talked about Turk from Scrubs.
The Scrubs. He is a good boy. He's a very good boy.
Damn it, Rhodey.
No, so I have a problem with the whole last act of this movie.
Okay. I'm glad it wasn't just me.
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot of things in the last act that do not make sense. So, and to be fair with you, I did not remember that. I just remember like being a little confused when I got to the ending the first time, but then ultimately just being like, oh yeah, like it's a loop. Like,
right.
That was like my takeaway from it. But like looking at it again, okay, so what you just mentioned, yeah, absolutely, they could do that, right? Like why not just do that? But like also, two things about like why the whole like premise of the final act is ridiculous, which for the record, what we're talking about is in the final act, Bruce Willis, James Cole, has decided he's going to stay in the past because this is what he wants. He wants to live in the past where things aren't messed up, and he wants to get it on with Madeline Stowe's character, Catherine Railly, right? And he's going to go down to the Florida Keys and live his best life. Well, like while they're at the airport, they come to the realization that the Army of the 12 Monkeys is now responsible for the plague. It's this lab assistant, and the lab assistant is also at the airport, and he must have the plague with him because he's visiting like way too many major cities,
right?
For business, right? So there's the climax is, you know, the future is aware of the mistake now. They tell James Cole that he has to take care of it, but it's not clear exactly what they want him to do. He just says you gotta shoot him, right? So they decide that means that he has to shoot the lab assistant. Okay. So this doesn't make sense to me for two reasons. Number one, we have already established that the past cannot be changed. So why are we trying to shoot? Like, I don't understand what that accomplishes. Because, like, this has always been, like, a scientific, like, fact-gathering mission, right? So they gathered
the important fact, and now they want to just shoot him and why not use the information to go back in time again. But I've got the answer, and I know why it doesn't make sense, and I know why it never will, because the people in charge in 2035 are not the people that we would put in charge who actually have the brains to pull off the right methods of time travel. Yes. Because at the very, very end of the movie, when the lab assistant sits down on the plane, he sits next to a woman who says she's in insurance. The woman that he sits next to on the plane who's in insurance is one of the leaders of the lab in the future in 2035. She's one of the people who's talking to Cole, preparing him to go time travel, which means she's one of the most important people I don't know if you noticed that or not, but if you didn't, this is a key point, because the people in charge in 2035, because remember, most of humanity gets wiped out, which also means scientists and doctors and really, really smart people. So that means the people in charge in 2035 are whoever the smartest people left were. And one of those people was this lady who's just an insurance agent in 1996, which means they're all fucked forever because you don't have the right people in the right roles in 2035 to, one, do time travel correctly, which is also why time travel gets messed up throughout the film. And it's also why they can't handle the end of this movie correctly when they get the correct information. They have no idea how to act.
Okay, so I am so glad you just addressed that. The ending of this movie I found so confusing. And I think you're right. I think that's exactly what that's supposed to be. Because like
Yeah.
the first time I saw this movie, I'm gonna walk you through my thought process on
Yeah.
both times when I observed this. The first time I saw this movie, and the twist of one of the heads of the scientific program sitting next to the man who will release the plague on the plane, and she says, "I'm in insurance." I misinterpreted that, thinking, "Oh, she came back in time, uh, and she's going to be the one that kills him because like
Ha.
she's insuring the future."
Got
Right?
it. Got
Right.
it.
That's
Got
what I
it.
thought the first time. Right? I watched it the second time and I realized, oh, that was completely wrong because this. She's not from the future. She actually is from this point in time. Right? Which like we come to see that, right? We come to
Right.
see like a few future characters who
Right.
lived in this time, right? And in watching it, I was like, oh, okay. So are they like making a meta commentary here that like the past is the past and like it's being insured, like nothing will change from this moment? Which like maybe, but like no, that's absolutely what they were getting at, what you just said.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
this person did not have a job that qualified her to be in the role that she will later carry out, which later
Right.
informs the mistakes that will
Right.
lead to
Correct.
them creating the past of the 12 monkeys and the plague.
Yep.
It's
This is
that's the
why.
insurance. That's the
This is
insurance.
why.
Oh my god.
Yeah. This is why, because the whole time they're chasing the wrong organization, because the people that are in power, one, they figured out how to they figured out how to time travel, but they haven't figured out how to time travel correctly, or like on to like the specific points they need to, which also means they don't have the right access to the right information throughout time to get the right info they need, which is why they're chasing the wrong organization the whole time when they really should just be chasing one guy. And it's because the people in charge in the future are just the smartest people that were left, which means insurance agents and, whoever else. Name it. But it's not, 20 of the smartest, physicists and engineers. It's just the smartest people that
Who
survived
just
the
happened to be alive.
plague.
Okay, this is why we do this, because this exchange, like I was so lost with this ending.
I am so glad that I was the one to enlighten you on how this movie goes.
Totally.
This is
Even watching
amazing.
this movie twice, I did not pick up on that.
Amazing.
And you're so right. That's got to be what it
Amazing.
is. Because one of the themes of this movie is humans make everything worse. Yeah, that is 100% what they were trying to say at the ending. Thank you. I legit talked to like my friends about this. I'm like, I don't get the ending of this movie. I don't get what it's trying to say.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
That's 100% it.
yeah,
And
that's it.
the second that scene happens, right, when he sits next, the lab assistant sits next to this woman on the plane, I'm like, wait a minute, that's the same woman who's been talking to Cole in the future the whole time. I'm like, holy shit. And then she goes, hi, I'm in insurance. I'm like, oh my God, no fucking wonder they're so bad at this time travel stuff. She's an insurance agent until 1996, and then she has to figure out how to survive, and then she has to figure out how to save everyone else in the future later. It's like, this is crazy. She's underqualified for all of it.
Yeah. Oh man,
Ugh.
that's so great. That is so wild.
But it's also it also explains why the future looks so shitty. Like even
Right,
even
they,
like
they don't have the
19
right people to do
they don't
any
have
of
the right
this.
people to do any of it. So even like 1996 technology, if you don't advance it in 2035, would still look better than what it looks like in 2035. But when you
Mhm.
take under consideration that they also don't have the right people in place for the things they need to do, it makes perfect sense. So really, the director, Terry Gilliam, like
Gilliam, yeah.
Gilliam, brilliant. Like the whole thing is brilliant by with set design and like the with how the characters are like, with who they actually are
Inept.
and like
They're
yeah,
all inept. Yeah.
the details throughout the different timelines is brilliant with when you take in all those things into consideration. It's really well done. Like I am like I think maybe an hour in, I was like, oh my god, this movie's awesome. And then once the movie ended, I was so pissed that I had never heard of it and that you got to pick it in the time travel draft because like when you picked it at first, I was like, oh, this idiot just picked a movie called 12 Monkeys. There's no way it's going to be better than my Stuck in the Loop. And my Stuck in the Loop was Prisoner of Azkaban, and I'm a Harry Potter stan, so I'm not gonna say it's better than that. But god damn it, Joe, it's a good pick. You picked
Thank you.
well.
Thank you. I do remember really enjoying this film
Ugh,
as a teenager when I saw this.
it's really good.
Definitely think I got a lot more out of it as an adult because, like, as a kid, I never picked up on like about like the ineptitude of the
Yeah,
scientists, right? Like,
yeah,
with like the joke of like them continuing to send him to like the wrong places that he needs to be, right?
right.
Or like even like when he eats the spider, right? And like that one doctor's like, "That was good thinking, Cole. Like try something like that again next time." But like, why? Like because the spider's
Yeah,
digested. Like what are you talking about?
yeah.
um,
So stupid. Yeah.
yeah,
That point too is like, what are you talking about, dude? Like,
yeah,
doesn't make any sense. Like,
yeah. He was desperate. Like
yeah,
there was no
exactly.
there was no intelligence behind that
Yeah.
action. Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. I love
You're
that that just happened.
I
I'm so
love
blown
I
away right
love it.
now.
I love that. See, this is why and this is it makes more sense to you now why I told you at like 3 days later like, "Joe, I'm still thinking about this movie," because that's why, like, it's brilliant. It's brilliantly done. It really is brilliantly done. Um,
I still think that there is a bit of a problem with the last act with like them
oh,
all of a
100%.
sudden deciding
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
oh yeah, just shoot
100%.
him. Like that doesn't make sense.
No, no, a
It
lot of
does.
it doesn't make sense, but they
Yeah,
clean it up by with when you realize that everyone's
the
inept in the
ineptitude.
future. You just accept it at that point.
Ah, there was one other thing I wanted to mention though about that final act that doesn't make sense. I can't remember what it is. It'll hit me later. Um, I did want to ask you though, on a last note before we move on, um, as far as shoot, no, it's I'm still blown away that both thoughts have just been totally off the
Ho
train.
does the movie open with a shot of Cole's eye? Like, are we
Yeah,
looking in his eye?
I
Is that how
believe
it
it. Yeah,
opens?
we see his childlike
Yeah.
eyes,
Okay,
witnessing
okay. Yeah,
his what will become his death.
by the time we got to the end of the movie and they showed his child self after watching his older self get shot, and then obviously, like, it zooms into his eye, like, the movie ends,
Hmm.
like, zooming into like, young Cole's eye, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, I think the movie started that way, but so much shit just happened that I forgot." So I just wanted to clear that up, which would make sense because it's like a full circle Stuck in the Loop film. Like, it's as stuck in the
Hmm.
loop as you can possibly get. Like, um, yeah, anyway. Um,
Before we go on to final scores here, what would you say is the thing that stuck with you most from this movie?
oh, that's a good question. What stuck with me the most? Honestly, like, Brad Pitt's performance was so good. Like, I want to rewatch this movie just because his performance was so awesome, and he won a Golden Globe for it. Like, amazing. He lost the Oscar. I think he was the runner up to I read it this morning. I read it. Kevin Spacey for Usual Suspects, I think, won the Oscar in that category.
Wow,
I think, if I remember correctly. So,
I
okay.
think that's the same year. Yeah.
But like he won the Golden Globe, which was really cool. Like because he was awesome in it. So that sticks out to me the most, I think. And then obviously the very end is such a it's just such a mind bend because of the woman from the future being an insurance agent in 1996 just completely opens up it opens everything up for just like accepting the chaos of it all and realizing that they're not going to get it right. They can't change the past because they're terrible at what they're doing in the future. That's why they can't change the past.
Like they're so focused on the past that they can't even like work to build the future, right?
Right.
Like you brought
Right.
up that point about like the technological developments and how they're stuck in the past. Like they're
Right.
literally stuck in the past and they can't move forward because
Right.
like they're in this loop, right? I mean, both
Right.
like emotionally and literally.
Right.
Um, yeah. Yeah, that is so wild. I think the thing that sticks with me the
Also,
most.
you know what I'm just realizing now? They're so
What's up?
inept that they're underground, not because they have to be from a pandemic perspective. They're underground because they're like, because we see wildlife above
Mm.
ground. There's animals alive above ground. So you're telling me that whatever the disease is just like
Yeah,
human
just
specific?
humans, supposedly.
I almost don't even believe that. Like that now they can't live above ground anymore. They have to live underground. Like that's going to help them. I
It's
don't think
because they
that's true,
have
man.
it's because they have unreliable brains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That man, I'll tell you. What we might need to make sure of the next time there's a global pandemic is that the smartest people are like super protected because the last thing we want is a 2065 that looks like 12 Monkeys 2035 where like someone like me
Preach.
and you are trying to figure out time travel.
Oh, we don't want that. We don't want that. Because I would be the guy who would say, "Yeah, try something like eating a spider again. Good idea."
Yeah,
That would
right.
be me.
God.
I remembered what I wanted to ask you.
Yes.
Um, it was the thing about the the guy who Cole thinks is talking to him. The guy who keeps calling him Bob.
Oh
We
yeah.
hear him. We only hear him in the future. But in the past, we see him. I guess. What did you think that was about?
Right, like the really old homeless guy with like no teeth.
Yes.
That's who Cole
Yeah.
thinks is the guy who talks to him when he comes back in the future.
Right. But I'm not so sure it is because like
Man.
the thing with the teeth, right? Like he takes that advice and rips the teeth out of his head, which also that is
Yeah.
one of the funnier lines in the movie when the pimp who stumbles upon them in the
Yeah.
whorehouse and he's like ready to whoop their ass, but he ends up getting his ass whooped, right? And then like he's in the bathroom and Cole cuts out his teeth, and and the cops come in and like you only hear him, but like in the background you hear him saying like I'm the victim here. I got beat up by like some bitch, some crazy dentist. It's like that's usually my favorite line of the movie.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Dude, but
But yeah, I'm
I
not.
don't know what to think about that Bob character, like the voice that he hears in the future and then allegedly seeing him in the past. The only thing I can think of is there are a couple moments and there's one specifically where they're running through this is when they're running so this is when him and the doctor, when Cole and the doctor are like he first kind of kidnaps her or takes like has her follow him and I think they get to Philly and they're like in the underground parts of Philly, like in the homeless areas, like trying to like they're following the 12 monkey signs, right? So they end up in like this like underground area, like and this is when like they get jumped and then Cole like kills a guy to save both of them or whatever, and then they leave that area and they're running through like a homeless like camp basically, and a couple people like recognize Cole or something and they're like, "Oh, he's one of us, man. He's one of us." Is what they're saying. And I kept
Mm,
thinking in my head, I'm like, "Man, you know what? Like half these homeless people in Philly are just people that the future sent back to try to like figure out what's going on and they just got stuck there because the future obviously is inept and they can't they were just figuring out the time travel thing." So like basically this movie also is giving you like half of the homeless population in the streets in 1996 is like people from the future being sent
right.
back
It's just
just
they're
testing time
stranded.
travel. They're just
Yeah,
they were time travel testers and they were figuring it all out. Like that's basically what like they were trying to tell us during those scenes in the movie.
so horrible because like if they're telling the truth, it just sound insane.
Right. Right.
So sad.
Yeah, there's layers to it, you know,
Yeah.
that also make you like, oh shit, like it's a little, yeah, it's layered, and
I
wild.
think
It's
you're
wild.
I think you're I think you might be right about the people that say that you're one of us. Because like you can take that two ways, right? Like literally, like, and they are time travelers that are predicting the end of the world, and
Right.
they're right because it's coming. Um, or it's to add to like that paranoia that like James Cole like is experiencing throughout his story, right?
Yeah.
I'm inclined to think that you're correct, that the future is so inept that they just keep like
Yeah.
abandoning people in the past. I want to say
100%.
you're right about that.
I honestly, I can't imagine that I'm wrong, and it's strictly like that last scene is so important to this whole film.
hmm
With realizing that one of the leaders from 2035
He's not a
is
scientist at
an
all.
insurance agent in 1996
hmm
when this all started. Like that is such a big. It's like the shortest scene in the film. It's 3 seconds of dialogue, like, but it's super important for everything that's happening because it makes so much sense why they're sending him to the wrong timeline, and then why they probably did have hundreds of prisoners that they had time travel tested, and half of them got stuck, and half of them lost their minds because they hadn't figured it out well enough yet, right? It's definitely what it is. It's
That
fascinating. It makes the
that
whole
almost
movie
makes me
work.
think.
It
That
makes
almost
the whole
makes me
thing work.
think that time travel had actually been developed by the
Fire.
90s. Yeah,
That's a
and
good
like
point.
like they have it like in the future because like smarter people made it, right? And now they have
Yeah.
this tool. These monkeys like have this tool, and like
Right.
they don't know how to use it correctly. Damn, I almost wish that there were 12 scientists. Oh, God. That would have been a little too on the nose. Jeez, that would have been
Yeah,
great.
there wasn't 12, right? There was
There
like
weren't
6 or
12.
8 maybe. I
Yeah,
think it was 8. Maybe it
I
was
think it's
8.
about 8. I wish that would have been
Yeah.
so great. The thing that stuck with
Yeah,
me
but there
is
weren't 12 monkeys either.
oh, like the Army of the 12 Monkeys.
Right.
Right, yeah, there was actually a bunch of them. Right, like the number never makes any sense
Yeah.
because like
Oh,
it was always a fabrication, right? Like it was always a lie.
I wanted to ask you this though. How many times do they say the word monkeys in the movie?
I
Halfway
have
through the
no
film,
idea.
halfway through the film, I realized they had said it at least 5 times,
Hmm.
and I was like, man, I wonder if they
Oh,
say
if they say it 12 times,
wonder if they say monkeys 12 times in this film. But it's probably more because Army of the 12 Monkeys gets said a lot, so it's probably
it does
more.
get said a lot.
But
Yeah.
they say the word monkey like for other reasons besides
Hmm.
just the Army of the 12
Yeah,
Monkeys.
they do. That's true.
So they use the word monkeys
And
outside of the 12 Monkeys context a bunch. So I was wondering what
yeah,
the significance was there. Uh, I would love to interview Terry Gilliam for this. It would be awesome to ask him questions about like all the creative choices they made. We're gonna have to one day. One day
one day we'll
we'll
get them. We'll
we'll
get
send him a DM.
them. the
Um,
uh, the thing that stuck with me the most, the thing that I'd actually love to talk to him about, other than like maybe some of the other themes of this movie, because like there are other themes that we haven't talked about, like TV, for example. This movie seems to like have some very negative opinions on television,
yeah,
and it brings them up quite a bit. But anyway, the thing that sticks with me is one particular shot. There's one shot that I adore because it works so well for the theme of this movie. It's the part of the movie when we are in the I think we're in like a senator's mansion or something
hmm
for the party that Jeffrey's father is throwing.
yeah,
And James has reunited with Jeffrey. They're going at it. They're having their disagreement, and while James is being taken out by guards, they're on this spiral staircase. And there's this wonderful shot where the camera is looking down on them as they're walking around the spiral loop. Like it just looks like an endless spiral as they're going. And I'm like, what a like I wonder if that's the whole reason why they chose this mansion, like just for that spiral staircase, or if it wasn't, and they just like saw the opportunity and they're like, we have to get a shot on that staircase. Like, wow, brilliant! It's the best shot of the movie. I love it so much. Okay, so Nick, for per our time travel draft, I want to change how we score things. So I want to score this three different ways.
Okay, let's do
Our
it.
classic scoring, right? 1 to 5. We'll do 1 through 5 for all three of these, but classic, like, how'd you feel about the movie? How'd you like it? What'd you think of the craftsmanship? 2, what'd you think about the time travel mechanic? Because this is a time travel draft. And then finally, uh, how well did the time travel movie fit the category that it was selected for? Okay. So first things first, how did you feel about the movie 1 to 5?
1 to 5. Awesome film. I it's really well done, and especially after talking it all out with you, I'm like, it's probably even more well done than I originally thought coming into the conversation. It's talking it out like really helped. Um, the downside here for this particular movie is that this is the first one we're reviewing, so I can't. I gotta be a little bit like I gotta start somewhere with the grading, and so it might get an unfair grade at the beginning, but hopefully at the end when we're done with all the I don't know how many movies is it 12 we're gonna end up doing
12.
12.
Oh no, it would have been 12. It would have been 12. I forgot. It was originally 12. It's actually
Okay,
14.
so it's 14. Okay, whew. Loop. So after the 14, so out of 5, I'm gonna go 3.8. Um, if this was like getting reviewed like halfway through the 14 movies, it probably would be in the 4s. But I wanted to start a little lower just to kind of it's just a good area to kind of work off of. 3.8, I think. It's really good. It's better than a 3.8. If we were just scoring this on its own without considering the fact that like there's a whole time travel movie section we're doing with 14 films, it'd probably be like a 4.2. But right now I'm just like 3.8. Let's just like ease into this time travel saga of ours. Yeah, I hope that's okay. I hope you allow the reasoning there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, 'cause I think it's impossible to like do these kinds of exercises where you're judging movies against each other without like the consideration of I need a benchmark,
Right.
right? Like I can't start with like I loved this, it's a
Right.
5.
Right. Well, but it's also I think it's also good that we didn't start with something like Interstellar that we both absolutely
yeah.
adore. You know, like this was a great start. Like it's an older film, 95. It's one of the older films we're going to watch out of the 14. Um, so I think it's a great starting benchmark area too.
Mhm.
And yeah, okay. What about you?
So I want to do the same thing that you did, set the benchmark because yeah, I don't want to go too high with this. Um, but you know what's funny? I think I would have been lower had we not had this conversation. Because like, dude, yeah, that the final scene really
Dude,
confused me.
I'm not gonna be able to
Um,
sleep tonight. The fact that I like helped you realize what the final scene meant for the whole
yeah,
film.
what
That's
it's
like
trying to
it's a
say,
big
yeah.
moment for me, especially during a time travel film. This is a huge moment for me. Like this is like
I,
I'm proud of myself for
I
for
cannot
helping
tell
John.
you. I cannot tell you how confused I actually was. And I think it's because like I spend too much time in metaphor. I'm like, what's it trying to say
Yeah.
metaphorically? You know, and it's like, no, 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 it's not a metaphor. They're
Yeah.
actually just stupid.
They're idiots. They're unreliable brains, all of them, the
Unreliable
whole
brain.
lot.
I think, Nick, I think I'm gonna line up right on with you, actually. Um, I don't want to give it a 4 because I actually do have a problem with the final act. I think a lot of it, like, I mean, I love the final two scenes, right? I love how Cole dies, and I love the thing with the insurer. Even before I didn't get the thing with the insurer, I loved that it was happening, right?
Right.
I was like, well, it's clearly saying something. two final things. I think how we get to those things feels rushed, and like we're missing something, right? Um, Also, I don't feel like that there's a lot of emphasis on the lab assistant. It's just like, hey, do you remember this dude who was being super weird earlier? It's him.
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't.
I,
They could have set him up a little bit more.
a little bit better,
Yeah.
agreed. And there's some other confusing things about the movie as well. Overall, I really like this movie. Like you said, Brad Pitt is just so entertaining to watch on screen. He's a delight. I'm going to line right up with you here. I'm giving it a 3A. Time travel mechanic. What do you think of the time travel mechanic for the narrative of the story? Does it work? Does it have problems? How do you feel?
Well, this is the funny part about this one is it works, but it also doesn't because of how inept the future is because of how many people die in the past. So you can't have the smartest people working on the time travel mechanic. So while the time travel mechanic is manageable and does work to a point, it doesn't work as well as it could. So this is like it's so funny, really, to actually score the time travel mechanic for this film because like it's it's like throw a dart blindfolded at a board and you might hit the spot you're supposed to get to. So I'm gonna go with 3.2 for the time travel mechanic on this. Um, yeah, I mean like I think that's actually like, and I'm not even thinking of other films in this regard. I think that's just like a total respectable score for the film. And it's the film doesn't want a better score than that either, based on like what we've learned. The film is not trying to be the greatest time travel mechanic film of all time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just trying to survive with what it's got.
I think that's an excellent point. I'm actually also not going to score very high in time travel mechanics. This is a conversation I'm so excited to have with you while we watch all of these movies, because I
Same.
think part of the fun of time travel is like setting up how the time travel happens.
Yeah.
And this movie isn't too concerned with like the how. Right? It's
Right.
like it's pretty like soft science. It's
Right.
science. It's pretty
Well,
soft
there's
on it.
there's like none actually. Like we don't even
Yeah.
get time travel
No, we don't
science.
even really know what it is,
And
right?
we get
Like,
like one scene where he just gets like shot through a cannon. Like
right,
that's the time
Like
travel
a
scene we get.
pneumatic
It's like
tube,
okay,
like a bank,
okay,
just whoop.
right, exactly.
And like we don't get any explanation to like how that works, like which we don't need necessarily, right? But for the point of the movie, like the point of the movie is like making a theme about like humans being awful, right? And like so time travel is not super important here, but like it does set up some rules about time travel, which I do appreciate, right? It's like we're dealing with the idea of you can't influence or you can't change the past, right? Apparently, you can influence the past, um, but yeah, you can't change it. And the movie sticks to that premise the entire time, but for some reason, the characters decide in the last act that they can change the past, and I don't know why they think that. um, so for some confusing last act issues with the time travel mechanic and it being kind of soft on like the how, I think I'm just gonna give this a 3. I'm just gonna go like right there for a 3.
There we go.
There are movies that do like the mechanics of time travel much better, but I am gonna give it a higher score here in a second. So the category, as we discussed, is stuck in the loop. So there must be some sort of loop or endless loop or a loop that is meant to be broken in the film in question. So Nick, where are you at?
It's actually really hard to not give this one a 5 out of 5.
Mm,
Like this is as good as it gets from a stuck in the loop perspective. And it honestly it doesn't even feel right to like give a buffer because like I feel like this is the category that's gonna be like there might be a couple movies where it's in the 3 to 4 range, but I feel like the movie's either going to be like, yes, this is right on the money for the category,
yeah.
or it's going to be like, it was almost there. But I have a hard time believing that we're going to score any of these too low because we also had to make our cases and we didn't have
I
any
don't know.
real
You might
arguments.
watch Donnie Darko and severely disagree with me later.
That's true. That's a good point. But But that's why I get to score it in that regard,
That's
right?
right. You get to score it. Yep.
I having said that, like I shouldn't give it a 5, like so like I guess I'll just give it a 4.5 for Stuck in the Loop. Uh, it's as good to me. It's as good as it can be for a Stuck in the Loop film. I think it does a great job. Yeah, I almost wonder if we should even score this part of it. If it should just be like a yes or a no. But I guess the scoring's probably okay. We'll do the scoring. But
You can always go retro on it. Like if we get through like Azkaban and we're like, you know what, it makes more sense to just give this a pass or fail.
right,
We could just do that, just pass or fail on the cat.
yeah, that might be
Yeah.
better. But we'll keep going like this, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
All right. So
Anyway,
you're going.
how about you?
What would you say? You went with 4.5, right?
Yeah, 4.5.
4.5. Nice. Yeah, man, dude. Just it's an endless loop.
Yeah,
And I love that. It's horrible. It's sad. It's great. I think, are there movies that do this better? Um, I mean, I guess better is tough, right? Because I think when you say that, I think you have to take into consideration, you know, the idea of a loop and the narrative itself, and whether or not it being in a loop works with what kind of story it was trying to tell, which in this case it was how humans create their own problems, right? And it's an endless cycle of problems. And I think it uses, like, because you could tell that story in any context, right? It doesn't have to be time travel,
right.
but it does. And the whole idea is that it's an endless loop of problems that we create for ourselves. And I really love that. I think that's a brilliant theme. I think maybe this is a little like, self-indulgent, but like, I think I will go with like a 4.8 here. I'm just gonna
Nice.
go shy of a 5, for reasons that we discussed earlier. But yeah, I'm gonna go 4.8.
All right.
All right, well, that's our first movie in the bag. 12 Monkeys. Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm really glad you liked it. I had a feeling that you would.
Yeah,
Um,
very good.
yeah. But our next movie, Nick, we've said it a few times, but it's your movie. Care to lead us into what we're watching
Okay.
next?
So is that what we're gonna do? Once we get to it, we pick a category. We'll do both from that category back to back. Is that the thought?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. But
No, I like it. I'm good.
I think the next category we should lead with your movie. Like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Okay. So
after this one, like you'll
then
pick
it's
the
mine.
category next, and then you'll choose your movie. You know what I
Got
mean?
it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, but for this case, for Stuck in a Loop, my Stuck in the Loop film was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Mhm.
So, very excited for that. I've seen this movie, I mean, 50 plus times probably. It's ridiculous. That's probably the low end. So that'll be really cool to talk about it in a time travel sense. And yeah, that's the next one. Yeah, stay tuned. Stay
Stay tuned.
tuned.
Yeah. I'm excited for that too. But until next time, may the review be with you.
Peace.